I won $2.8 million and rushed to surprise my husband at work, but what I overheard outside his office shattered everything. The lottery ticket was still warm in my hand when I heard him say her name. Not the way you say a coworker's name, not the way you say a friend's name, the way you say the name of someone whose body you know better than your own, low, deliberate, like a key turning in a lock only the two of you share. I had been standing outside Aaron's office door for maybe 6 seconds. 6 seconds that rewrote 4 years of marriage, 3 years of motherhood, and every single story I had told myself about the life we were building together. The ticket in my hand said $2,800,000. The voice on the other side of the door said, once the divorce goes through, she gets nothing. She's too trusting to see it coming. I didn't cry. I didn't knock. I didn't make a sound. I stood there in the hallway of Medina Capital Partners, in a yellow sundress I had put on because yellow is Aaron's favorite color, holding a life-changing lottery ticket, and I became someone else entirely. Someone he had massively, catastrophically underestimated. The before I need you to understand what our life looked like from the outside, because it matters. It matters because the lie was beautiful, and beautiful lies are the cruelest kind. Aaron and I met at a mutual friend's housewarming party 6 years ago. He was 34, recently made partner at a boutique investment firm, wearing a navy blazer and talking about microloans in East Africa, with the kind of passion that makes a person feel ashamed for spending their weekend watching reality TV. I was 29, a mid-level project manager at a construction firm, recently divorced from my college sweetheart, and thoroughly convinced that romance was something that happened to other people. He pursued me like it was his profession. Flowers delivered to my office on a Tuesday for no reason. Voicemails, actual voicemails, not texts, where he just described something beautiful he'd seen that day and thought of me. A weekend trip to Asheville 4 months in, where he booked a cabin with a wraparound porch and made pancakes from scratch and said, entirely without pressure, I think you're the most quietly remarkable person I've ever met. I married him 11 months after we started dating. Our son Eli came 2 years later. He was born at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in March, 7 pounds 4 ounces, with Aaron's dark eyes and my mother's stubborn chin. Aaron cried in the delivery room, real tears, the kind that leave a mark. We bought a house in a suburb of Charlotte, a fixer-upper that I spent 18 months restoring. I refinished the hardwood floors myself. I rebuilt the kitchen table from a split oak slab I found at a salvage yard. I plastered and painted and sanded until that house felt like a home that had always been waiting for us. I worked part-time after Eli was born, managing 2 small commercial renovation contracts while Aaron ran the firm. We weren't rich, but we weren't hurting. We had a life that looked from any reasonable angle like the real thing. The red flags were there. I see that now. The locked phone that he'd started carrying face down 18 months ago. The business trips that seemed to cluster around the same weeks. Always Dallas. Always 3 or 4 days. The way he'd started coming home slightly too relaxed, like a man who had already spent his tension somewhere else. The gym membership he renewed but stopped using. The expensive cologne that appeared without explanation. I told myself it was the stress of the firm expanding. I told myself I was being paranoid because of what happened in my first marriage. I told myself a lot of things that kept me comfortable inside the lie. The ticket. Here's the strange part. I almost didn't buy it. It was a Thursday morning in late October, and I was at the Quick Trip on Mallard Creek Road, buying a coffee and a banana for Eli's daycare snack bag. The woman in front of me was buying a Powerball ticket. The jackpot had rolled to something enormous, and there was a small handwritten sign above the machine that said the last winning ticket from that machine had been 6 months ago. I don't gamble. I have never gambled. My mother plays the lottery every week with the same 6 numbers and has won exactly $18 over 27 years, which she considers proof of a system working as intended. But I had $4 in my jacket pocket, and something made me reach for them. I scratched the ticket in my car. Then I sat very still for approximately 4 minutes. Then I called my mother. Mama, I said, I think I need you to drive to Quick Trip. She made me read every number 3 times out loud. Then she drove 40 minutes to sit beside me while I verified it on the state lottery website on my phone. Then we both just sat there in the Quick Trip parking lot, not saying anything, while Eli slept in his car seat and the October sky did something extraordinary with the late morning light. $20,800,000. Lump sum, pre-tax, approximately $1,960,000. I thought about what to do for about 4 seconds. Then I thought about Aaron, and I knew I needed to tell him. That's what you do. That's what marriage is. You come home with something extraordinary, and you share it with the person you chose. I called my mother back 2 hours later. Don't tell anyone yet, I told her. I want to surprise him at the office. She paused, just a beat too long. Be careful how you do that, sweetheart, she said. I thought she meant the surprise. I thought she was just being cautious about big news and emotional reactions. She wasn't. The hallway I drove to Aaron's office at 11:45 a.m. His assistant, Keisha, 26 and meticulous, glanced up when I walked in and did something I didn't notice at the time. She picked up her phone before saying hello. He's on a call, she said carefully. I'll wait, I said, but I didn't wait, because I could hear his voice through the glass partition of his corner office. Not on a call, talking. And I recognized the particular softness in his voice, the register he slipped into when he thought no one was paying attention. I walked toward the door. 6 seconds. Once the divorce goes through, she gets nothing. She's too trusting to see it coming. Then another voice. Female. Low. Amused. And the kid? A pause. Supervised visitation, Max. My lawyers say the income disparity alone gives me grounds to push for primary custody. She barely works. My hand was on the door handle. I didn't open it. I turned around. I walked past Keisha, who would not meet my eyes. I walked out of the building into the October sun. I sat in my Honda Pilot for 11 minutes, staring at the Quick Trip receipt in my cup holder. Then I did something that surprised even me. I smiled. Not because I was okay. Not because I wasn't devastated. I was. The hurt was there, enormous and hollow, pressing on my sternum like a fist. Eli's face flashed across my mind, his little voice asking, Dad, "Daddy, can you read the dinosaur one?" at bedtime, and that nearly broke me. But underneath the grief, something else had arrived. Clarity. I put the car in drive and called my mother. "He's planning to divorce me and take Eli," I said. I heard it myself. A long silence. "Let him keep thinking you don't know," she said. Her voice was steady. She'd always been steadier than me in a crisis. "Mama," I said. "I need a lawyer." "I know one," she said. "I've been holding her number for 2 months." The quiet war begins. Let me tell you about Dana Whitmore. Dana Whitmore, JD, has been a family law attorney in Charlotte for 19 years. She is 5'2", wears reading glasses on a beaded chain, and speaks so quietly that you find yourself leaning in just to catch her sentences, which her clients eventually realize is entirely intentional. She has tried 2 of 14 cases. She has lost 11. When I sat across from her desk 3 days after the hallway, she looked at me for a long moment before she said anything. She had a yellow notepad and she hadn't written a single word yet. "Tell me what you want," she said. "Revenge or protection?" I had been expecting a list of options, a breakdown of the process, something procedural and emotionally safe. "Protection first," I said. "For Eli and for me." She wrote something down. "Good," she said, "because revenge is a byproduct. Protection is a strategy." Over the next 3 weeks, Dana walked me through everything. We secured the lottery winnings through a blind trust established under my maiden name, Renata Calloway, before I claimed the prize. The structure was ironclad. Aaron Medina had no legal access, no knowledge of it, and no claim to it if we divorced, because under North Carolina law, assets acquired individually during marriage can remain separate property with proper documentation, particularly lottery winnings in one spouse's name. Dana brought in a financial forensics specialist, Marcus Okafor, CPA, CFE, formerly with the IRS's Civil Fraud Unit, to begin reviewing Aaron's business finances. "If he's planning what you heard," she said, "there's almost certainly financial concealment already underway. These men don't improvise, they prepare." Marcus found the first wire transfer within 4 days, $340,000, moved from Medina Capital's operating account to a shell LLC registered in Delaware called Blue Pine Holdings, then moved again to an account in Aaron's cousin's name in Raleigh. "That's just the first one I found," Marcus told me. His voice was flat, professional. "These are usually layered." It was layered. By the time he finished, the total was $1.2 million in hidden transfers over 14 months. Aaron had been planning this for over a year. The performance. Meanwhile, I came home every night and played wife. I cooked dinner. I helped Eli with his coloring pages. That week he was obsessed with dinosaurs, and he insisted on coloring every single one in colors that bore no relation to reality. Purple T-Rex, orange Brachiosaurus, a hot pink Triceratops that he named Gerald. I laughed at Gerald. Real laughing, because Eli could make me laugh even in the wreckage of my life. Aaron played husband. He was attentive, almost suspiciously attentive. He brought me flowers on a Wednesday. He did the dishes twice without being asked. He made pancakes on Saturday morning, from scratch, the way he had in Asheville years ago. And I ate them, and smiled, and said they were perfect. Survival sometimes looks like a standing ovation for your own betrayal. 2 weeks after the hallway, Aaron sat down across from me at the kitchen table, the table I had restored myself. He folded his hands on the oak surface like a man about to make a business presentation. "I need to talk to you about the firm," he said. His voice was careful, practiced. I set down my mug. "Okay," he laid it out methodically. "Creditors, a lawsuit from a former investor, regulatory pressure. It's bad," he said. "Really bad. Unless we move quickly, everything is exposed." He looked at me with something that wanted to be love but landed closer to calculation. "Including you and Eli." I kept my face soft. I let my eyes go wide at the right moments. I pressed my lips together like a woman fighting to hold herself together. "There's one way out," he said. "There it is. If we divorce now, on paper, just on paper, they can't touch your assets. I'm trying to protect you, both of you." He reached across the table and covered my hand with his. His thumb moved in a small arc, back and forth. "Once things settle, once I restructure the firm and get out from under the legal exposure, we figure out our future. But right now, if you love me, I need you to sign." The dinner I'd left simmering on the stove smelled like garlic and rosemary. Eli's crayon drawings covered the refrigerator behind Aaron's head. Gerald the pink Triceratops watched me from the center of the gallery, unimpressed. I let silence sit between us for a long moment. "I need a little time," I said softly. "This is a lot." He squeezed my hand. Relief moved visibly through him. "Of course, take a few days." He went to bed at 10 that night and was asleep by 10:15. I went to the laundry room, turned on the exhaust fan, and called my mother. "He said it almost word for word," I told her. "I know," she said. "Dana called me. The recording was clean." I had been wearing a voice-activated recorder, a small Sony ICD UX570 that I'd clipped inside the breast pocket of my cardigan. Dana had advised it. North Carolina is a one-party consent state. Every word Aaron said at that table was legally recorded and admissible. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," my mother said, "you let him think he's won. The discovery inside the discovery." The second week of November, Marcus Okafor sent Dana a file. Dana forwarded it to me at 9:47 p.m. with a subject line that just said, "Read tonight." I read it at the kitchen table, Eli asleep upstairs, Aaron supposedly at a late business dinner. The file was 34 pages, single-spaced. Aaron wasn't broke. He was hiding. The lawsuit from the former investor he'd described? It was from a business partner who had caught Aaron redirecting client funds. The creditor issues? Largely manufactured on paper to create a record of financial distress. The regulatory pressure was real, but not catastrophic. Not without the hidden transfers that Marcus had found, which would become catastrophic if they surfaced in divorce discovery. The plan, reconstructed from email correspondence that Marcus had flagged as potentially relevant, obtained via court-ordered subpoena to Aaron's business email server, processed by Dana's office under Exhibit C7 of the preliminary discovery request. Aaron had been working with a woman named Vanessa Cook, 31, a former client of the firm who had become, over 14 months, both his mistress and his co-architect. The divorce was designed to happen fast, before Aaron's financial chicanery became untenable. He would emerge from a clean divorce with a sympathetic narrative, struggling businessman, amicable split, shared custody that he intended to immediately challenge and convert to primary. With his income documented at roughly $380,000 annually versus my part-time salary of $42,000, his attorneys had already told him, according to notes found in his personal email, that he had a strong case for primary residential custody of Eli. He was going to take my son. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I had passed through the shaking weeks ago, somewhere between the parking lot of Quick Trip and my first meeting with Dana. What was left was something harder and quieter, the particular fury of a woman who has done the math and knows the outcome. I texted Dana at 9:51 p.m. "I've read it." She responded immediately. "How are you?" I thought about it. Then I typed, "Ready." The dinner, Aaron's annual investor dinner, was the second Thursday of November. He held it every year at a private dining room at a restaurant called Beaumont's in Uptown Charlotte. 12 to 15 major investors, a few board-level contacts, his senior partners. It was a performance. Aaron at his most magnetic, most polished, most carefully constructed. He invited me every year. Every year, I attended and smiled and made conversation and felt vaguely proud of what he'd built. This year, he invited me again. He was thorough. He needed me there as evidence of the stable, beloved wife. Vanessa Cook would not be there, of course. She would be at the bar 2 blocks away waiting for a text. I said yes. I wore a burgundy dress and my grandmother's pearl earrings, and I drove us both to the restaurant while Aaron rehearsed talking points in the passenger seat. Dana's team was already in place. We had filed the divorce petition that morning, under seal, with the Mecklenburg County Family Court. Judge Patricia Hollins, who had been assigned the case, had reviewed Marcus Okafor's financial report, all 34 pages, plus the 218 pages of supporting documentation, and had issued a temporary asset freeze on Aaron's business accounts and known holdings pending a full discovery hearing, scheduled for 3 weeks out. Aaron did not know any of this. He walked into Beaumont's like a man who owned the room. He worked the space, handshakes, shoulder grabs, that particular laugh he deployed with investors, the one that made you feel included. I stood at his side and smiled and sipped sparkling water and said the right things to the right people. At 8:22 p.m., during the lull between the appetizers and the main course, Aaron stood to give his annual remarks. He thanked everyone for their continued partnership. He spoke about the year ahead, opportunities in emerging markets, his vision for the firm's next phase. He said, toward the end, "None of this would be possible without the stability and support of my family." He looked directly at me when he said it. I looked back. Then I stood up. It wasn't dramatic. That's the part people don't expect. I didn't flip a table or shout or cry. I simply stood, and the room went quiet, because rooms go quiet when something shifts in the air pressure. "I'm sorry to interrupt," I said. My voice was even. "There are a few things the people in this room should know before they make any further financial commitments to this firm." Aaron's face did something complicated. I had Dana's paralegal, Jordan Reese, standing at the back of the room with a laptop connected to the restaurant's presentation screen. We had arranged with the venue manager 3 days before, explaining only that we needed to make a last-minute presentation. Jordan pulled up the first slide. It was Marcus Okafor's financial summary. Clean, annotated, time-stamped. $1.2 million in documented transfers, shell companies, redirected client funds, named accounts. The second slide was a transcription of the recording from our kitchen table. Key passages highlighted. The third was the discovery file, specifically the emails between Aaron and his attorneys about the custody strategy, about Eli, about what Aaron had called, in writing, the income disparity leverage. I pressed play on the recording itself. Aaron's voice filled the room at Beaumont's, clear and unhurried. "If we divorce now, they can't touch you or Eli. I'm doing this to protect you." A pause. "Once things are fixed, we'll figure it out. But if you love me, you need to sign." The room was absolutely silent. Aaron was standing. His chair had scraped back and he was standing, and I watched his face move through rage and calculation and something that might have been the first honest thing I'd ever seen from him. Fear. "Renata," he started. "I'm not finished," I said. The fourth slide was the divorce filing, filed that morning. Case number, judge's name, the asset freeze order. A man named Robert Callahan, Aaron's largest investor, $4 million over 5 years, a man I had made small talk with at this same dinner for 3 consecutive years, pushed back from the table and picked up his phone. He wasn't the only one. I sat back down. I folded my hands in my lap. A server appeared at my elbow and refilled my water glass. Aaron left the room, not gracefully. He nearly knocked a chair over. His phone was in his hand before he cleared the door. I finished my sparkling water. Jordan Reese met my eyes from the back of the room and gave a small, professional nod. The unraveling. What followed was not satisfying in the Hollywood sense. Real consequences don't arrive like weather, sudden, cinematic, all at once. They arrive the way morning does, incrementally, then undeniably. Robert Callahan withdrew his investment within 48 hours, citing a material change in his confidence in leadership. 2 other investors followed within a week. The firm's remaining senior partner, James Fong, resigned and took 3 client accounts with him. By the end of November, Medina Capital Partners had filed for voluntary restructuring, not quite bankruptcy, but close enough that it made the Charlotte Business Journal's notable filings column on December 9th. The client fund misdirection that Marcus Okafor had documented was referred to the SEC's Charlotte Regional Office. I was told by Dana that a federal inquiry had been opened, though timelines on these things are deliberately vague and she didn't want me counting on any particular outcome. Vanessa Cook, I later learned, had retained her own attorney within a week of the dinner. She and Aaron had, by all accounts, a spectacular falling out. I don't know the details. I don't particularly want them. The custody case never became what Aaron had planned. His documented intent, in his own words, in his own emails, to weaponize income disparity against me to gain primary primary custody of Eli was part of the case file reviewed by guardian ad litem Sandra Pruitt, a licensed clinical social worker with 22 years in family court. Sandra spent 3 weeks conducting interviews, home visits, and reviewing documentation. Her report, submitted to Judge Hollins in early December, recommended primary residential custody with me, with structured visitation for Aaron contingent on completion of a financial ethics evaluation and co-parenting counseling. Judge Hollins agreed. Aaron did not take it gracefully. There were 2 heated phone calls, one of which I recorded and submitted to Dana as documentation of his communication conduct. His attorneys eventually convinced him to accept the recommendation rather than pursue litigation that, given the evidentiary landscape, they apparently told him plainly he would lose. Eli asked me once during that month why Daddy wasn't coming home for dinner anymore. I told him that Daddy and I were working on some grown-up stuff, and that Daddy loved him very much, and that nothing about that would ever change. All of those things were true, even the last one, in the ways that mattered. The final reveal. The settlement conference was in January. Judge Hollins, Dana, Aaron's attorney, a man named Patrick Greer who looked increasingly unhappy throughout the proceedings, and a mediator named Carol Finch who had been doing family court mediation in Mecklenburg County for 16 years. Aaron had been building his case around one central argument, that I had limited earning capacity and minimal independent assets, making a long-term support arrangement financially reasonable for him to manage, which his restructuring attorneys had carefully crafted to minimize his apparent liquidity. Dana let him finish. Then she placed a single document in front of Carol Finch and slid copies to Patrick Greer and the court record. It was the blind trust documentation, the lottery ticket verification, the tax records filed under Renata Calloway, $2,800,000, claimed the day after I overheard him in that hallway, protected under North Carolina separate property law, fully shielded, not a marital asset, not accessible, not subject to equitable distribution, not leverageable by Aaron Medina in any direction. The silence in that conference room was different from the silence at Beaumont's. That silence had been public and electric. This one was private and surgical. Patrick Greer set down his pen. Aaron looked at the document for a very long time. Then he looked at me, and I thought about the kitchen table I had restored myself, the one he had sat across from me at, holding my hand, telling me that if I loved him, I'd sign. I thought about Eli's pink Triceratops. I thought about the parking lot of Quick Trip, and my mother's voice saying, "Be careful how you do that, sweetheart." I thought about the woman who had driven to that office in a yellow sundress, holding a winning ticket, ready to share everything. She was never what you thought, Dana said quietly, not to anyone in particular, just into the room. The settlement was finalized in February, after we moved in April. Not far, 30 minutes north of Charlotte, a smaller town called Huntersville, a house with a yard big enough for Eli to run in and a kitchen with original 1960s tile that I already have plans to restore. Eli started at his new daycare in May. His teacher, Miss Yolanda, told me at the end of his first week that he had spent the entire art period trying to convince the other children that dinosaurs were actually all neon colors and that scientists had it wrong. Miss Yolanda seemed charmed by this. I told her it was a hill he'd been willing to die on for several months. My mother visits every other weekend and brings groceries I don't need and sits at the kitchen table with Eli for hours working on what they call advanced coloring, which appears to involve no rules whatsoever. Dana and I have stayed in touch. She is, I think, one of the most precise people I have ever met. I sent her a handwritten note after the settlement closed, and she sent one back that said simply, "You knew what you were doing from the beginning. Some women just need the right moment to prove it." I kept that note. With the settlement and my independent assets, I established a foundation in the spring, the Calloway Fund, named for my maiden name, the name on the lottery ticket, the name that existed before Aaron and after. Its focus is straightforward: legal assistance and financial transition support for women navigating divorce without resources. Dana sits on the advisory board. Marcus Okafor handles the financial oversight. My mother is, technically, the volunteer coordinator, which mostly means she brings food to planning meetings and tells everyone they're doing a wonderful job. The Calloway Fund partnered with 3 legal aid organizations in its first 6 months. We helped 22 women file protective orders, secure emergency housing, and access legal representation. We're growing. People ask me sometimes, usually in the way people ask when they want to understand the shape of a story, whether I felt sorry for Aaron. I've thought about it honestly. I feel sorry for the version of him that might have existed if he'd been a different kind of person. I feel sorry for the father Eli deserved and doesn't quite have. I feel sorry, occasionally, for the man who sat in that conference room in January and looked at a document that told him, quietly and completely, that the woman he'd planned to leave with nothing had never once been powerless. That version of me, the one in the yellow sundress clutching a lottery ticket, standing frozen outside a glass-partitioned office door, she made a choice in those 6 seconds. She didn't run, she didn't cry. She didn't knock on that door and confront him with nothing but hurt in her hands. She turned around. She thought. She built something. The lottery win wasn't the miracle. I need you to understand that. The money was just money, a piece of luck that arrived at a specific moment and became a tool instead of a surprise. People have asked me, what would you have done if you hadn't won? I think about this sometimes, especially late at night when the house is quiet and Eli has fallen asleep mid-sentence about something that mattered enormously to him 2 hours ago and nothing since. I think I would have done most of it anyway. Slower, harder, with less runway. But the part that mattered, the listening, the choosing, the refusing to stay inside the lie, that part didn't cost $2.8 million. That part was free. The moment everything changed wasn't in the parking lot of Quick Trip. It wasn't in Dana's office, or at Beaumont's in front of a room full of stunned investors, or in the conference room in January when Patrick Greer set down his pen. The moment everything changed was in that hallway, in 6 seconds, when I heard what I was worth to the person who'd promised to protect me and decided he was wrong. Everything after that was just proof.